And welcome, everyone. It is Friday, and that means it is time for a new episode of iCritic Live, where we talk about movies, pop culture, and life in between. I'm Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for joining me today. And in fact, you are not just joining me today. We have a guest for this particular episode, where we discuss a film that the Walt Disney Company has not wanted you to see for many, many years. And when I decided I wanted to talk about this video, I could think of no other person best suited to talk with me than Micah from the Emperor's New Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, before we get started, tell me a little bit about your podcast and what it is you do.
I host the Emperor's New Podcast, where we explore every corner of the Emperor's New Groove universe. So we talk about the movie. Sometimes we talk about episodes of the show, and sometimes I even bring people on who worked on the movie or the show and interview them.
Oh, that's really cool. So I think I can say, just from what I've seen out there, I have never seen a podcast dedicated to one Disney movie before.
Yeah.
And it really surprised me in a good way that it was on the Emperor's New Groove, because the Emperor's New Groove is not only the funniest film Disney has ever produced, it's actually got one of the most checkered histories as well. Yep. And so I'm sure that you have talked about the movie that we're going to talk about on this show before. It's kind of, if you will, one of the big shadows that looms over the production of the Emperor's New Groove. And that is the fact that the Emperor's New Groove was not always supposed to be what it was. Would you like to tell people what the original vision of the Emperor's New Groove was?
Okay, well, how long you got?
Well, let's make it like the brief, like, what was the originally the movie was going to be directed by Roger Allers, who worked on The Lion King and ended up directing Peabody and Sherman, of all things.
Yeah. Also had Patrick Warburton in it, coincidentally.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
He wasn't in this version of the movie that he was making, but...
Right. He didn't end up finishing the movie, but the original movie was actually going to be a epic called Emperor of the Sun. And would you like to clue people in on what that was supposed to be about?
It has it was originally called Kingdom of the Sun.
Kingdom of the Sun, sorry.
Yeah, and it was basically, well, it was like 3 different plots. It was a Prince and the Pauper story. There was also a love interest and a sinister conspiracy with the villain, who was still named Yzma and played by Eartha Kitt, but at the time was to be animated by, animated by Andreas Deja, who would leave when the tone changed and go to work on Lilo instead. And they had original music from Sting, some of which is made it to the Emperor's New Groove soundtrack as a sort of consolation for it not ending up in the movie. And again, Kronk was not in this version. Instead, Yzma's only real sidekick, Yzma had a talisman that was voiced by Harvey Fierstein. And apparently in some iterations, she also revived with like 3 mummies or something. It went through many stages.
And there was, it definitely sounds like there was a lot going on in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Eartha Kitt stuck around after the movie got retooled. I think David Spade also stuck around, but actors like Owen Wilson got cut, and Harvey Fierstein got cut. All of the original songs that Sting wrote for the movie got cut, although he stuck around. But ultimately, the movie got retooled and finished by Mark Dindal, who is actually directing the upcoming Garfield animated movie, which gives me a lot of hope for Garfield.
Well, it seems to have a good track record with movies where there's prominently cats featured in some way or another. So
yes, because he also directed.
I don't remember there being a whole lot of cats in Chicken Little.
No, there were a few, but yeah, he also directed Cats Don't Dance, for those who are unaware. And actually, he hasn't really done a whole lot in the last
You know,
decade or so. So
there
I'm
was some
glad
stuff
that he's
that
kind of
like didn't end up like he was going to direct a movie for DreamWorks, but that ended up not happening. I think he was like a board artist, but like had no actual creative input on Wonder Park. But I might be misremembering, or maybe that was someone else.
well, Wonder Park was that movie that directed itself. Nobody wanted credit for that one,
Yeah,
which is strange because that means that somebody wanted credit for the Ugly Dolls movie, but they
yeah,
didn't want credit for Wonder Park.
yeah,
That says something right there. Well, one of the things about this retooling, and here's the thing we should actually mention: Disney movies get retooled all the time.
yeah,
This is not anything new. And Disney is actually kind of open about this for the most part. They act on their Beauty and the Beast special features. They actually admitted that, yeah, they started making a version of Beauty and the Beast. Didn't quite get to the animation stage, but they had a director and they had some tentative songs, and they just looked at it and they were like, this isn't working, and they scrapped it and started from scratch. So Disney halting movies and starting over from scratch is nothing unique. What is really unique about this situation, though, is that one of the agreements that Sting made was that his wife Trudy could film the animation process because she was fascinated by the making of Disney movies and she wanted to make a movie about Disney making movies herself. And she ended up filming what was one of the most tumultuous film projects in Disney history. And that movie is called The Sweatbox. But a lot of you may not actually know what The Sweatbox is because Disney doesn't likes to pretend it doesn't exist.
yeah,
And it does exist, though. It has a Wikipedia page.
yep,
And as you can see, there's no poster for it. There's a title card. And that's because for like more than 10 years, Disney did a very good job at keeping this movie a secret.
yeah,
They only did one week theatrical run, which was unadvertised, by the way, to qualify it for an Oscar.
yeah,
And then I think it showed up in a Florida Film Festival, but otherwise, crickets.
yeah.
And the funny
then
thing is, if you actually ask an executive at Disney why they haven't released this movie, they will actually pull a little trickery on you. They will say, oh no, we have released the Sweatbox. And they say that because they were contractually obligated to release it. They just were not contractually obligated to release it in full. So on the Emperor's New Groove Ultimate Edition DVD and probably the Blu-ray as well, there's like this 10-minute making of the music by Sting. That's their release of the Sweatbox.
Yeah,
That's their way of getting out and saying, hey, we released it.
yeah,
But that does beg the question. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. Eventually, though, and we don't know who leaked it, the Sweatbox did get leaked online, and now it's out there. And you can watch it if you're willing to go to some dark and really not so dark areas of the web.
I think it's on the Internet Archive, or at least it was.
Yeah, it was on the Internet Archive for a while. I found it on YouTube. I remember I actually have a burned DVD copy of it. Like I downloaded it and then I burnt it onto a DVD and I put it in my Emperor's New Groove case so that I always have it. But since it's been leaked and there's still no official release, it begs the question, why does Disney continue to sit on this movie? After all, they themselves have released documentaries that showed the Disney company in troubled times, and they've even done a Mickey Mouse documentary recently that showed some of the less favorable aspects of the character over the years. So what is it about this movie that makes Disney not want to release it? And that's going to be the main discussion. But I guess the first question I should ask you is, do you like this movie?
The Sweatbox?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I enjoy anything that is like a behind the scenes look at the production of the movie, even if it's a tumultuous one. It also it also provided me some footage for my own documentary, I'll admit.
Ah, yeah.
Uh,
I think the documentaries, just the tumultuous periods, are actually more interesting
yeah,
to watch because, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on this, but even though this movie is known for showing a dysfunctional Disney, I actually think the ultimate message is, well, but look how they came together to make something that was really unique at the end of the day, despite the troubles.
yeah, yeah. Um, I have always, even before I got super into the Emperor's New Groove, I've always enjoyed the behind the scenes stories and documentaries and stuff. And then, of course, when I got in the Emperor's New Groove and I found out there was this whole story of how it went from a completely different movie to what it is now, and there was a documentary, I eventually found it on YouTube. Uh, this was like over a decade ago. So I watched that, and yeah, I enjoy it. I know that, and I don't think is any excuse because they have stuff on Disney Plus with this in it all the time. But like Sting and a few other people do definitely have some colorful language in that documentary. But there's
Yeah.
plenty of colorful language Disney stuff they're putting out now, so I don't think that is a factor in why they wouldn't release it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I recall one F word by Sting, which, if we're being honest, that can be muted pretty
Yeah,
easily. And I think the original version of the movie got a PG-13 rating, so it's not even like it was this edgy R-rated, everyone's
yeah,
swearing type of documentary. And yeah, when you think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, so they released the Boys, which is the Sherman Brothers story. They did the recent Mickey Mouse documentary. They showed some of the conflicts of the Beauty and the Beast, and the Little Mermaid makings of.
yeah,
Most interestingly, Disney released Waking Sleeping Beauty, which was probably the most in-depth of like all the problems that the animation studio was going through for several years, not just for this couple of years. Now, at the time, I could kind of understand why maybe the studio was not necessarily interested in releasing this movie. For one thing, Disney was going through a rough time. CEO Michael Eisner was accused of mismanaging the theme parks, the animation division. Emperor's New Groove did not make a lot of money. Let's be frank, it just didn't. And to have a movie out there that basically shows the animation studio kind of being mismanaged and them wasting all this money on a movie that, like, they spent twice as much on the movie than they probably
yeah,
needed to. And of course, I think the person that comes off looking the worst is Thomas Schumacher,
yeah,
who basically nitpicks at every little thing. And I believe he is still at Disney. So he probably stands to look really foolish if this movie gets officially
yeah,
released. But aside from him, and I don't even know if he's that powerful because he runs the theatrical, like
yeah,
Broadway division of the company.
yeah.
Why do you think Disney still continues to hold on to it, even though it's been leaked?
I don't know. There could theoretically, I don't know for sure. There could be reasons from various people in the film might have a say in whether they release it or not. I don't know. Like if Sting has any involvement with whether they would want to release it or not, or if they'd need to go through him, or I don't know. Really, it's truly a mystery because
Well,
pretty much everyone knows about this in the age of the internet about the backstory of everyone knows what the sweat. Not everyone, but it's generally public and already, so there's no reason to not release it because everyone is finding it without Disney and not giving them money for it. So you would think they would want to make it so it's available for people to give them money for it.
right. This isn't like this isn't a Song of the South situation where
Yeah,
there's like a lot of debate about whether or not the film is appropriate for children or not. This is a documentary that I think only hardcore Disney fans would really be interested in watching.
yeah,
And most of the people who, you know, how should I put it, that didn't look good in the movie. We're talking about the Michael Eisner, the Peter Schneider. These are the people that aren't there anymore. Roger
yeah,
Allers isn't there anymore. The producer isn't who produced
and
the Emperor's New Groove. He's not at Disney anymore. I think he's making guitars now. So Sting's wife directed it, so I doubt he would get in the way
Yeah,
of its release. Do you think this is a situation that maybe Disney forgot about it and no one there just thinks about it?
Maybe the people who actually released stuff forgot about it. I know that definitely not everyone at Disney has forgotten about it, because I know people there who definitely know about it. But yeah, it's possible that, especially with Star Wars and all this other stuff, it's just not a priority right now. Is certainly a possibility.
Yeah. Well, it's something that they could put up on Disney Plus and relatively easily, I think.
Yeah.
But I do know for a while that Disney, they were fiercely protective of this movie. In fact, there was I have a friend at Pixar, and he worked on The Incredibles, and there was one night where Brad Bird really wanted to watch The Sweatbox, so he arranged for it to be screened at Pixar with the animators and things like that. And he noticed that the guy who brought the film was just standing next to the projector, and he was like, so dude, you can go get something to eat or get some water or something like that. We're fine. And he's like, no, you don't understand. If this film leads my site, I am fired.
I think I've heard that story before, though. The version I heard claimed it was John Lasseter who wanted to see it, but I don't think. But yeah, friends.
Well, Lasseter or Bird. I mean, so obviously that story got out there.
Yeah, one of my friends does a podcast about usually, except for the 1 month where they did stuff that wasn't stuff on Disney Plus, mostly chosen at random. But one time they did. Sometimes their guests, every time, the first time a guest has been on for 10 episodes, they'll get to pick what they talk about, and one guest picked The Emperor's New Groove. So that was one of the stories he told when he was talking about that movie, was that he heard about the screening that they had, and that there were just like guards guarding the print of the film, basically.
Yeah, you would think that they were hiding codes to the Disney Vault or something.
Yeah.
But I love that story because it kind of went to show how secretive or how sensitive they were taking that movie.
Yeah.
Now, as for the movie itself, of course, there are many things you could take away from it. For me, one of the things that definitely stood out was I really liked the songs that Sting was writing for the Kingdom of the Sun.
Yeah.
And especially that Snuff Out the Light song. That could have been a great Disney villain song that you almost wish they could have found a way to include it, but then what would it be referencing?
Yeah. They did. There was a 1-day event like in Paris and it didn't really make much sense, but Yzma was there, and she had like a karaoke battle type thing, and they used the audio from that as her song, which was interesting.
Well, that's very interesting. So they still have audio files on it. That's that's good. Although Disney never throws away anything, of course.
Yeah, unless it's like a Stitch animatronic that's like rotting in.
Right. But I definitely noticed that the songs were good. They seemed much more appropriate for the Kingdom of the Sun. I mean, I did like that Sting was trying to sing the opening song for The Emperor's New Groove, and to see him get frustrated and basically say, this isn't working, and then they hired Tom Jones. And
I believe he said that, I'm too old for this. You need to get someone young and hip. So they got Tom Jones, who's like 10 years older than him.
Right. But Tom Jones, his voice that voice is still youthful as ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if like Sting was too old for that song. I think he just did not have the right voice for it.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've heard some Randy Newman songs that are terrible, but then you put another singer. Like Randy Newman wrote the song called Feels Like Home, and when he sings it, it's fine. But you get a woman with like a powerful voice, and it's like that song radically transforms, like even though he wrote it. So I think that's what was going on.
Other than Stuff Out the Light, which is obviously going to be sung by Eartha Kitt. I was very unclear on if like Sting, because in the soundtrack for sure it's Sting singing all the other songs. Like in the movie, was it going to be like a Tarzan thing where the songs played over it, or I couldn't quite figure that out when I was watching the documentary.
I don't think that was the intent, because they also showed the Walk the Llama Llama song,
Yeah,
or at least the animatronics of it, and it looked like it was going to be a little bit of a musical number.
animatics. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what Owen Wilson sounds like when he sings, so that would have been interesting.
That would have been very interesting. Actually, there's a question for you. Do you think they were right to keep David Spade, or should they have gotten rid of Spade and kept Owen Wilson for the Emperor's New Groove?
I mean, I like David Spade's performance in the movie we got. I don't know how it would have been in the movie we didn't get, but Owen Wilson was just playing a completely different version of the Pacha character, who was just like he looked just like the Emperor in this version, who was
Right.
named Manko, which apparently they changed because it means pussy in Japanese. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. No, that's fine. This is it's a tidbit. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So they changed the name to Cusco, which is named after the capital of the Inca Empire, though they changed the way it was spelled to be fancier, I guess, and more trademarkable.
Right. Because we all know that Disney loves to trademark their stuff. Now, the Harvey Fierstein sidekick, that might have been interesting, but I definitely think that of the whole redo thing with the Emperor's New Groove, I definitely believe that Kronk was probably the best addition.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like it's actually very fascinating when you stop and think about it. And this is kind of getting a little off the sweatbox, but Patrick Warburton is one of the few celebrities I can think of who people recognize, but he's primarily a voice actor, and he became famous because of the Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah,
like his voice work on that made him a star.
and before that, there was like a few people knew, like the people who worked on the Emperor's New Groove, which is how they got him, knew him from Seinfeld, but he wasn't as much a household name until the Emperor's New Groove and Family Guy, pretty much. Those are the two that cemented his voice acting, especially. And he
does a very specific voice very well.
He has he has a very recognizable voice that he can like change the register, so it can be more like this or more like this, and it will change the character into a different type of character. So like Kronk's more up here and Joe Swanson's more down here.
Yep. And he's so good that even his little cameo in Home on the Range was a highlight.
Yeah.
But
I rewatched that recently. I think who you're watching it with really affects how the experience is, because the people I watched that with seem to have a really good time. But yeah, he was definitely one of the best parts, and that character's name is Patrick, so they just named him after Patrick Warburton.
Yeah, we're not even pretending anymore. It's Patrick Warburton, folks. You know it's him.
And he was also even more briefly in Chicken Little, probably because Mark Dindal directed it.
Yeah, exactly. Now here's something that was always fun about the Sweatbox, because when people talk about like, oh, it was originally going to be this, and they were going to do this, and they were going to do this, it's always easy to like go like, oh, that sounds so awesome. I wish they had made that movie. But interestingly, in the Sweatbox itself, they showed one of the studio pitch at one point, and I have to admit, as cool as everything seemed to be coming together, when they show that pitch, it's like, this is kind of boring.
Yeah.
And so yet that's one of the most frustrating things about it, is you want to really hate the executives from meddling with it. But yeah, that little story pitch where they're showing the intro with the sun and the legend of it and everything, it's like, it's not working. It's not coming together. It's like, it's not even 5 minutes into it, and I'm already not engaged.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Kingdom of the Sun could have ever been a good movie?
Ever? It could have been maybe 3 good movies. That's what I think. But I don't know about one 90-minute animated movie would exactly do justice for something that was so overstuffed with. I think it would have been a lot like the Black Cauldron, where like it would have over time probably gotten some followers, but it would still have been a big flop, be probably bigger than Emperor's was for Disney even, had it gone through the way they wanted it to. Because you don't see a whole lot of Black Cauldron T-shirts at Hot Topic, like.
No, you don't see a lot of Black Cauldron merchandise, period. And Black Cauldron is a movie that it's like, people respect it.
Yeah.
They admire it. It's like we give Disney credit for trying, but at the end of the day, if you're being really objective about it, it's not great.
Yeah. And then you look at The Emperor's New Groove, and while it didn't have much to begin with, now, like 23 years later, there are shirts in Hot Topic, there's box lunch merchandise. It's kind of gone through a progressive, starting in like the 2010s and really taking off in the early 2020s, sort of gone through a renaissance of sorts of just enough, like not like it's in your face, but like there's Funko Pops, obviously. Funko seems to make a lot of money off of the Emperor's New Groove because they keep releasing new versions of the characters.
And they made that direct-to-video sequel and the TV series, so it must have been successful enough. In fact, I even remember one of the big stories, even though the movie ultimately lost money, was that it was one of those rare times where the movie made more money the second weekend because people were surprised by how much they enjoyed it, and they told their friends. And it was actually one of the rare Disney movies, because I was in high school when the movie came out. In fact, we saw a sneak preview of this movie. They were doing a double feature with Emperor's New Groove and 102 Dalmatians. And for my birthday,
movie that they marketed over the Emperor's New Groove.
yeah, that's true. But invited my friends, and I think they put up with it because it was my birthday and they knew I was still a Disney fan, but they had pretty much gotten over Disney for the most part. And they ended up enjoying the Emperor's New Groove so much that they were actually telling other of their friends, like, hey, we actually really enjoyed this movie. Yeah. It was funny. They didn't have a lot of nice things to say about 102 Dalmatians.
Yeah, I don't remember much about 102 Dalmatians, except that Eric Idle plays a bird that thinks it's a dog. That's all I really remember. And that there's a dog with no spots, and that's it.
Yeah, the thing that I remember the most about the 102 Dalmatians was the fact that the spotless dog was pretty much completely CG animated, and it never looked real.
Yeah, definitely the sequel, and for sure the TV show, because I've seen it's referenced in the pitch document for the TV show, which I've seen, are the result of the video sales for that movie doing really well. It was like the highest selling video of 2001, I believe.
Yeah. No, it definitely developed a following, and getting off the sweatbox for a moment, what do you think of Kronk's New Groove? I've got mixed feelings about Kronk's New Groove, so I'm kind of curious.
I don't hate it. I don't think it's nearly as bad as some of the other sequels they put out.
Right.
There's definitely a couple I think are better. But it's not as good as the first movie, but I enjoy it as a side thing. Like a little if you're bored and you want another hour and less than an hour and a half, but even a couple minutes less than the first movie. I think it's fine. That's basically what I think. It makes me laugh, but it doesn't have the same. Obviously, it definitely doesn't have the same solid story figured out that Groove has. Because it's basically like a flashback within a flashback, and it's like 2 or 3 different stories sort of stitched together.
I always wondered if that was actually like a test for a TV show that never materialized.
I don't know. It would have been really confusing because there was a TV show and it was being pitched right around the same time. as the
Yeah,
sequel
I'm kind of wondering if they did both of the pitches, made a few episodes of each one, and then they said, well, we like the new school concept better, but
yeah,
since you've worked on this, we'll turn it into a sequel.
yeah. Well,
You're right. Compared
I
to
don't
other,
think that's the case because I talked to one of the directors. It was a movie. I interviewed him for the documentary. It was a movie. I think that was it also was going through a trouble production, and the new people were brought in to change it at the last minute. They had
oh,
even less time, and then they had to rework Kingdom of the Sun. So that contributes to why it's in most of these sequels why they don't end up being very good is they don't have much time or money to put into making them the best that they can be.
yeah. Well, I didn't hear that story. That was just personal theory for
Yeah,
mine. I totally just because I've seen Disney do it with like the Atlanta sequel, which was really the canceled TV show.
yeah, and then there were a couple where they took a TV show that already existed and made a movie, compilation movies out of them. And with Tarzan and Hercules, they did that.
Yeah, they did that.
I
But the
think they
third
have
Beauty
the
and the Beast
same
movie, that
plot.
was a TV show that got canceled too.
Yeah, I think the Tarzan and the Hercules TV compilation movies had the same plot, like something about an anniversary or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Boy, the Tarzan TV series, I haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah,
I was always disappointed that Tarzan didn't move as fluidly in the movie, but oh, oh well. I think the best movie to TV series that they did, well, the two series that they did that were best were Aladdin and Tangled.
yeah.
I think,
I have not watched a whole lot of Tangled, but I have heard very good things. I think this. I mean, I know because I believe this, but I also know because I've seen lots of people talk about it, and apparently it's the only one that makes merchandise of the spinoffs. The Lilo and Stitch one, it has like it's
yeah,
pretty good too, and definitely has a
yeah,
there's very much you can see the seeds planted in the movie of what a series could be more than some of the other ones with Lilo and
right,
Stitch.
right. Experiment 626. I mean, that's that obviously means that there were other experiments
Yeah,
out there. So so yeah. Well, anyway, if you haven't seen Tangled, like I think just briefly saying that the Tangled animated series, like they went through some extra care with that one. They got
yeah,
every single voice actor from the movie back. They got they got Alan Menken to write songs for it. It was like they put some real effort into that, and it showed at the end of the day.
yeah.
So
I would love it if they do like more like if some of the people who worked on like the Tangled series would work on bringing back other properties for shows and doing like
oh yeah, no, that would be great. Like that proved that if you took your time and you really thought
yeah,
about it, you could make something great. And of course, it helps that Tangled was a sequel. I also liked how they finally gave up the whole Tangled trade. Like, all right, it's Rapunzel the series,
yeah,
like, which is what it always should have been named Rapunzel in the first place. But
yeah.
well, now we're getting way off topic. Back to the Sweatbox. Have you shared this movie with fellow friends who haven't seen it, and what was their reaction to it?
I've shared it with my mom, and she thought it was very interesting. And she's not nearly as obsessed with Groove as I am, but she does think that Groove seems to have been the right choice based on what we've seen from the documentary.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I've shared it with anyone else. I've talked to other people about it, but everyone either isn't interested in it or has already seen it. So
I I got to share it with several friends, and most of them were very fascinated. They don't really understand why Disney won't officially
yeah,
release it. I think that the executives who kept it locked away kind of misunderstood how people would react to it. I think they
yeah,
were thinking, "Oh, people are going to look at us and think we're such jerks," and it's like, no, they think it's just fascinating to see what the movie could have been
yeah,
because most people don't want Kingdom of the Sun. It's like they're glad that it became the Emperor's New Groove.
yeah. And there
Like
are a
they're
few people who want to release the hours cut and stuff, but yeah, in general, and there's some people who are split. Like they would have loved to have seen that, but they also love Groove. But in general, yeah, Groove definitely has proven that it lasts, and I don't know whether Kingdom of the Sun would have or not. Um,
right. Well, Well, you know, they did at the end of the day, they did what they had to save the movie. I mean, another movie that basically got reworked from the ground up was Ratatouille. And
Yeah,
Brad Bird admitted on one of those documentaries, like, yeah, I would like to see what that original movie would have been like, but it wasn't working. And when they called me, and that's not the vision I had, so
yeah,
I had to rework it, and that's just how it works at the end of the day sometimes.
yep,
So so I really wish that Disney, especially with Disney Plus or heck even Hulu, they Disney still has Hulu. Like it
yeah,
seems like they could put this on Hulu or something, and I think that would it's just I think it's just time to basically, as they say, move on. Like,
yeah,
look, it's here's the thing. It's been a while. In fact, if I were Disney, I would want to release it in 2 years for the I think it's the 25th anniversary in 2 years.
hmm yeah.
Gosh, I was
2025.
I was 14 when I
I was
saw that
6.
movie in theaters.
I did not see it in the theaters initially. I watched it on video, and I really didn't become as crazy about it until like 10 years later.
Yeah, but boy, thinking about so yeah, I think for the 25th anniversary, especially if they release it on on Ultra 4K, I would hope
Yeah,
that that Disney, whoever it is, and just to let everyone know who might be watching this later on, this isn't a Bob Iger or a Bob Chapek decision. It's whoever runs the video division. I hope
yeah,
whoever's there realizes, like, hey, look, we can release this documentary. It's been 25 years. Everyone's moved on. Let's just make this available. And, you know,
yeah,
if
and
nothing else, people will really want to see Kingdom of the Sun, and they'll just finish it.
yeah, they and the thing is, like I said, I used some footage of the sweatbox in my documentary, and at the current moment, Disney has yet to come after me, so I don't get what the. And I do. They did put a thing on the end that says a link to like listen to one of the songs, so I think that they're actually secretly monetizing off my video or something. But
Yeah,
um,
they probably were.
yeah, so I don't know why if they're making money off of the song from that version, they might as well release the documentary about it.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Now, I think the one person who probably would like to forget um, this whole thing existed, of course, is Roger Allers.
Yeah,
Like, you know, he was quoted as saying, Kingdom of the Sun was such a heartbreaking experience for me. I put 4 years of my heart and energy into that one. I was creating an epic picture mixing elements of adventure, comedy, romance, and mysticism. The head of Disney Features at the time was afraid that we were doing, in his opinion, too many films in the same vein. He was also uncomfortable with the spiritual and cultural aspects of it. Hence, he decided to make it a simple slapstick comedy. Would it have worked out if we had more time? I would hope so, but one can never know these things.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and then of course, they used just enough of his movie in The Emperor's New Groove that he's not free to remake it anywhere else.
yeah,
So, I would hope that with the 25th anniversary, especially since the movie has in some ways become important in its own right,
yeah,
it definitely has a bigger fan base than, let's say, Fantasia 2000 or
yeah,
Dinosaur.
yeah,
Um, and even though Hercules is a thing, I think people like Emperor's New Groove more.
yeah. I like them
So
both, but I do like Groove more.
yeah, no, I like them both too, but Emperor's New Groove's definitely a better movie.
Emperor's New Groove is more consistent, like tonally consistent. For
Right.
sure.
Yeah, although one thing that they both have in common, they both have very unique animation styles, which
Yeah,
I like. Now, since I have you on, I don't know how much you care about the Oscars, but I'm curious. The one Academy Award the Emperor's New Groove got was for the Best Original Song by My Funny Friend and Me, and it
yeah.
lost to Things Have Changed by Bob Dylan from Wonder Boys. Just curious, what do you think of that?
I don't really care.
You don't care.
Yeah,
Don't care that.
it's a fun fact to tell people, but it's not like I honestly wish Perfect World had been nominated.
Yeah, well, that would have been more in tone
Yeah,
with what the movie actually was. You listen to that song, and it is
it's a
really,
Sting song,
yeah,
and
it's a Sting song, and it's good, but
it's
it's
the
kind of
song you
weird
put
that
at
it goes
the
to
end
that
of
movie.
every single Disney movie that was coming out at the time. But most of the time, every Disney movie had enough of a balance of drama that it didn't seem too out of place. But then The Emperor's New Groove is full on comedy, and it has this ballad at the end of it, and it's a good song, but it's very jarring.
Yeah. What were the other nominees? A Love Before Time from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I've Seen It All from Dancer in the Dark. Fool in Love, Meet the Parents. It was not a great year for this best original song category
Yeah,
that year.
yeah.
um, well, yeah, I was just curious. I mean, you could always say, well, hey, The Emperor's New Groove is an Academy Award nominated movie.
Yep.
And
And
you
it,
can,
and it won some Annies, I believe.
yeah, I would suspect that the Annies would definitely give that movie some love. So so anyway, if you were grading the Sweatbox 1 out of 5 stars, with 5 being pretty much perfect and 1 being poor, what would you give the Sweatbox?
Maybe a 4.
Yeah, I'd give it a 4 too. I think that's a fair grade. I think it's a shame that Disney still refuses to release it, but there you go. So anyway, folks, I think that's a good place to end. We've talked about the movie, the availability. Anything else you want to discuss before we leave?
Just I have a documentary out in addition to my podcast on YouTube called Beware the Groove, the making of a cult classic. It starts basically with what's covered in the Sweatbox, and that's like the first 15, 20 minutes, and then it goes beyond what happened after the movie came out.
Well, I will definitely have to watch that one. And they can obviously find the Emperor's New Podcast on iTunes, right?
Yeah, and Spotify, pretty much all the Apple podcasts, all the basic podcast places.
Yep. And you've done 68 episodes.
I have. I think I've done 60. That might include the mini-sodes I've done.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Geez, a
done
couple of these are
60,
an hour and a half.
63 or 60. I can't remember 63 or 64 main episodes, and then there's like 4 mini-sodes that I did.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Well, I'm subscribed to you on podcasts, and I'll listen to a couple of them. You did an episode on Home on the Range, huh?
Yeah, I did that for April Fool's Day this year. I actually talked with one of the directors.
Oh, John Sanford. Wow.
Yep.
Oh, and this was an April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So, all right, folks. Well, that is our episode about the Sweatbox. Again, you cannot get it legally. So, and while I do want to preface by saying we do not endorse piracy for legally released stuff, if the stuff is not available for purchase in any format, well, we kind of leave that up to you to decide at that point. So anyway, you know the drill. We would love to hear your comments. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly, and we'll see you next time on iCritic Live. Take care.